What if I told you there was a man in Scripture who saw invisible armies, turned death into life, and defied the laws of nature with gestures as simple as throwing salt into water or striking a river with a cloak? Yes, I'm talking about Elisha, the prophet who walked with his feet on earth but eyes fixed on the eternal. But here's the twist. Elisha didn't start out great. He was just a farmer, an ordinary man. Until one day, a divine call disrupted his routine. What followed wasn't just history, it became a spiritual blueprint for anyone longing to live the extraordinary in the midst of the ordinary. This video is going to open your eyes to details you may have never seen before in the life of this prophet. And be warned, some truths here might challenge what you think about faith, miracles, and purpose. Because Elisha is not just a biblical character, he's a mirror for those seeking the courage to burn their plows, cross the Jordan, and live in full alignment with heaven. If this stirs something in you, consider subscribing. Here, we walk together toward the truth that transforms. Have you ever felt like your life is stuck even though you're working hard every single day? Picture yourself in a dusty field, plowing under the scorching sun, unaware that a divine shift is about to interrupt your routine. That's exactly what happened to Elisha, a humble farmer from Abel Meholah, until one day, a mantle landed on his shoulders. But this wasn't just cloth. It was the call of a prophet. From that moment, the land he tilled became the launching ground for a divine mission. You know that gut feeling like something greater is calling you, even when no one else sees it? That's what stirred in Elisha's heart when he locked eyes with Elijah and glimpsed the extraordinary. Taking that mantle didn't just change his job, it changed his identity. So let me ask you this. Are you ignoring your own mantle because you're clinging to comfort? So many people miss their divine assignment simply because it's disguised as an interruption. Now breathe with me and think. How often have you felt too small for something so big? Elisha could have played it safe. But what made him a prophet wasn't where he came from. It was his immediate yes. Sometimes all God needs is someone willing to obey without having all the answers. Books like The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren can be a compass when your spiritual direction feels blurry. But hold on, because what happens next will stretch your understanding even more. Elisha didn't just follow Elijah, he destroyed everything that tied him to his past. It's like burning the bridge so there's no way back. That tells us something crucial. You can't walk into destiny with a divided heart. Does your calling require sacrifice? Maybe it's time to let go of those familiar oxen and move forward with radical faith. If this stirred something in you, or opened your eyes, consider subscribing. We're walking together toward truth that sets us free. Because Elisha's journey is just beginning, and the next step shows the level of surrender that turns ordinary men into eternal voices. What comes next might just change everything. What would you be willing to burn to follow your calling? Imagine taking everything that represents your livelihood, your career, your stability, your future, and turning it into firewood for a farewell feast. That's exactly what Elisha did. He slaughtered his oxen and burned their yoke, not out of recklessness, but as a declaration, I'm not coming back. This wasn't drama, it was destiny. And sometimes, your next level requires an act that shouts louder than your fear. This level of commitment isn't about emotions, it's about resolve. Elisha didn't need to feel ready. He needed to be all in. And maybe you've been waiting for the perfect sign, the perfect time, or the perfect peace. But here's the truth. True purpose often demands movement before clarity. Like a prophet in training, you walk by faith, not perfect circumstances. Think about habits, like early prayer, journaling, or mentoring others, that can realign your daily life to match your deeper calling. Now listen closely. Letting go doesn't always mean loss. It can mean launch. Elisha's act of burning his plow wasn't about sacrifice for pain's sake, but about removing the option of retreat. In a world full of plan Bs, what would it look like to truly commit to your plan A? That uncomfortable conversation, that leap of faith, that move toward the unknown. It might be the door to your prophetic identity. But few are willing to strike the match. Still with me? Because here's where it gets real. The road ahead for Elisha wasn't paved with applause. It was a narrow path of learning, serving, watching. But those hidden seasons? They're where character is formed. You want impact like a prophet? Then expect obscurity before influence. Start small. Read a chapter a day, serve quietly, listen deeply. Because fire doesn't fall on altars built in a rush. And if this message found a place in your heart, subscribe and walk with us. The kind of journey Elisha took is available to all, but only to those who dare to say yes with no escape plan. And what comes next will test just how deep that yes really goes. What if your faith had to stand in the middle of fire, literally? Imagine watching flames fall from heaven, consuming everything in their path and realizing that God isn't silent. He's just waiting for someone to believe. Elisha stood there, not as a star, but as a student, watching Elijah face down hundreds of Baal's prophets. It wasn't just a spectacle, it was a spiritual showdown. And Elisha, wide-eyed and breathless, saw what happens when heaven answers courage. Let's get real. How often do we only trust when things are safe, calculated, and under control? Elisha witnessed that the true mark of a prophet isn't just eloquence. It's audacity rooted in conviction. Faith isn't about avoiding fire, but knowing who sends it. Maybe the fire you're facing isn't to destroy you, but to reveal something divine. Books like The Circle Maker by Mark Batterson explore this. Faith that circles your obstacles until the impossible becomes inevitable. Hold on, because there's more behind the flames. Elisha wasn't just observing a miracle. He was absorbing a mantle. Watching Elijah call fire down was a masterclass in prophetic boldness. And here's the thing. God often lets us watch before he lets us act. If you're in a season of watching, don't despise it. Watch with intention. Learn with hunger. One day, the cloak will fall on you. And here's the twist most people miss. This wasn't just about defeating false prophets. It was about solidifying identity. Elisha's faith wasn't forged in solitude. It was sharpened by exposure to divine confrontation. Who are you standing next to in your journey? Sometimes God places you near firebringers so you can catch the spark. Surround yourself with mentors, teachings, and prayers that stretch your comfort zone. If this sparked something in you, hit that subscribe button. Because Elisha's time in the shadows was shaping the prophet he'd soon become. And what's coming next? It'll show what happens when you step into the flames, with faith as your only shield. What if your first step into destiny had to begin with striking water? Picture Elisha standing at the edge of the Jordan, holding Elijah's cloak, still warm from his master's whirlwind ascension. No manual, no reassurance. Just a question, echoing in his chest. Where now is the God of Elijah? With one bold strike, the waters split. It wasn't just a miracle, it was confirmation. The baton had been passed, and the prophet had arrived. Maybe you've been handed a role, a responsibility, a mission, and you feel unqualified. Elisha knew that feeling. The Jordan didn't part because of status, but because of faith. And that's exactly where many of us miss the moment. We wait to feel powerful instead of acting in trust. Spiritual growth often begins with one bold move. Try fasting. Speak that prayer aloud. Step into what scares you with God at your side. Now stay with me, because this act wasn't for show. It was a prophetic declaration. I'm ready. When Elisha struck the water, he wasn't imitating Elijah. He was activating his own calling. Too many try to copy without connecting. Elisha had observed, yes, but now he had to believe. If you're in that place of transition, stop rehearsing someone else's faith. Start walking in your own. And here's something deeper. The Jordan was the same river the Israelites crossed into the Promised Land. Elisha's miracle wasn't random. It was a reset. Sometimes God takes us back to old landmarks to spark new beginnings. Maybe that Jordan in your life is a place you've crossed before, this time with new authority. Revisit old prayers. Redefine familiar places. Miracles often meet us where we've been before. If this stirred your spirit, consider subscribing. Because what happens after the Jordan will challenge Elisha and you in ways that only true prophets can endure. And the next chapter? It shows that even the smallest act of healing can ripple across a city. What if I told you that a handful of salt held the power to heal an entire city? Elisha arrives in Jericho and hears the people's plea. The water is poisoned, and the land is barren. No crops, no future, no hope. In a moment that feels almost absurd, Elisha asks for a bowl of salt and throws it into the spring. Just like that, the curse is broken. It wasn't chemistry, it was covenant. Because when a prophet speaks life, decay has no choice but to bow. You ever feel like something invisible is blocking your growth? Like you're doing everything right, but nothing flourishes? That's how Jericho felt. Productive on the surface, but sterile at the root. Elisha's act reminds us that spiritual healing often starts where the contamination began. Sometimes, that means confronting bitterness, unforgiveness, or fear. Try this. Write down what's been poisoning your inner well. Bring it into prayer. Let God cleanse from the inside out. Here's something most people miss. Elisha didn't just heal the water. He rewrote the future of the city. That one miracle unlocked generations of abundance. You never know how far your obedience will ripple. What if your decision to break a toxic cycle is the thing that saves your family line? Small acts, when done in faith, shift entire destinies. Books like Emotionally Healthy Spirituality dig deep into this kind of transformation. And it gets more personal. Because Elisha didn't need a crowd to validate his miracle. He didn't wait for recognition. He just acted. Maybe you've been waiting for someone to applaud before you step out. Let this be your sign. Move anyway. God honors faith that doesn't need fanfare. Healing isn't always loud, but it is always holy. If this resonates with you, subscribe and stay with us. Elisha's miracles are just heating up. And the next one, it takes a widow's last drop of oil and turns it into divine overflow. What would you do if your last resource was also your last hope? That's the exact tension a desperate widow lived. Her husband gone, creditors knocking, and her 2 sons about to be taken. Then enters Elisha. No long speech, no fancy ritual, just a question. What do you have in your house? A small jar of oil, that's all. And yet, in the hands of a prophet, that tiny bit became overflow. Multiplication, rescue, redemption, all from what she thought was not enough. Let's get honest. How often do we look at our lives and think, it's too little? Not enough money, not enough time, not enough faith. But this story flips the script. God doesn't ask for what you don't have. He asks for what you're willing to pour. Elisha's instruction was simple. Borrow jars, many, then pour. Faith looks like preparing space for a miracle before it happens. Try journaling 5 dreams that feel too big, then leave space for God to fill. But hold up. There's more. The oil didn't stop flowing until the vessels ran out. That means the limit wasn't heaven's supply. It was earth's expectation. Let that sink in. Sometimes what blocks our breakthrough isn't lack, it's our level of belief. Elisha showed this widow that the supernatural often follows structure. What systems could you build right now to hold the blessings you're asking for? Financial discipline, consistent prayer, honest community. These are jars too. And don't miss this. Elisha didn't just solve her crisis. He preserved her legacy. The oil paid the debt and saved her sons from slavery. What if your act of faith today becomes the freedom your children walk in tomorrow? Your obedience could be the inheritance you leave. Books like The Blessed Life by Robert Morris explore how generosity and faith unlock abundance in the kingdom. If this spoke to your heart, subscribe and walk with us. Because the next miracle Elisha performs, it doesn't just touch resources, it brings a dead child back to life. And trust me, that changes everything. What do you do when the miracle dies? Imagine holding in your arms the very promise you once received from God, now lifeless. That's what the Shunammite woman faced. She had been blessed with a son through Elisha's prophetic word, but one day, the boy collapsed. No warning, no explanation. She didn't bury him. She didn't panic. She went straight to the prophet. That's not denial. That's determined faith. Because real faith doesn't quit when it hurts. It climbs. Let's talk real life. How Many times has something you prayed for started well, then suddenly crashed? A relationship, a business, a ministry. Elisha's response to the woman wasn't casual. He traveled, entered the room, and laid himself on the boy, eyes to eyes, mouth to mouth. It was an act of deep connection and spiritual transfer. Maybe revival in your life will require more than prayer. It might need full presence, emotional, investment, and soul-level alignment. Now here's where it gets wild. The child sneezed 7 times and came back to life. 7. Not once, not twice. Sometimes resurrection is not instant. It comes in waves, in steps, in sneezes. Don't give up because you haven't seen full movement yet. God might be restoring you breath by breath. Elisha shows us that persistence in prayer is not weakness, it's prophetic warfare. Keep praying, keep knocking. But there's more beneath the surface. This miracle wasn't just for the mother, it was a prophetic message. What God starts, He finishes. Maybe you've doubted if He'll complete the work He began in you. Let this story anchor your hope. Dead dreams can rise. Lost time can be redeemed. Books like When Heaven Invades Earth by Bill Johnson echo this power of resurrection living. If your heart's beating a little louder right now, hit subscribe and stay close. Because the next event in Elisha's life, it's not about raising the dead, it's about defending the sacred. And it starts with a group of mocking youths and a sudden, shocking response. What if I told you that mocking the sacred has consequences? Elisha was fresh into his prophetic calling when a group of youths came out to taunt him, mocking his baldness, yes, but more deeply, mocking the mantle he carried. It might sound harsh, but what happened next was unforgettable. Elisha turned, pronounced a curse, and 2 bears came out of the forest, mauling 42 of them. Intense? Absolutely. But this wasn't about ego. It was about reverence for the divine. Let's unpack this, because the surface looks brutal, but the root is deeper. In a culture that mocks everything holy, this story is a wake-up call. Elisha's response reveals the seriousness of spiritual disrespect. Being a prophet isn't a popularity contest. It's a sacred assignment. And maybe your life has been under ridicule too. Not for who you are, but for what you carry. Don't let it silence you. Let it sharpen you. Now here's a twist. The youths weren't just kids. The term used implies young men, likely old enough to know better, yet bold enough to rebel. Their mockery represented a heart posture, dishonor. And in today's world, dishonor is casual, even celebrated. But the kingdom doesn't work like that. Honor creates access. If you want to grow spiritually, start by honoring what and who God has placed in your life. This event also confronts a modern fear, that standing firm in truth makes us unloving. But Elisha shows us that love and holiness walk together. Sometimes protecting the sacred means drawing hard lines. It's okay to be gracious and bold. Start with small actions. Speak truth when it's uncomfortable, defend someone's calling, refuse to participate in cynical conversations. That's prophetic integrity. If this challenged you in a good way, subscribe and stay close. Because the next chapter in Elisha's journey, it's not about confrontation, it's about divine intel, secrets from heaven, and what he reveals next could save a nation from disaster. What if you could hear conversations happening behind enemy walls? That was the kind of prophetic clarity Elisha walked in. Time after time, he warned Israel's king about Syrian ambushes, because God revealed the enemy's plans directly to him. The king of Aram was baffled, thinking there had to be a traitor in his camp. But no, it was divine intelligence. Elisha wasn't guessing, he was listening. And when heaven speaks, even the strategies of hell collapse. Now imagine how different your life would be if you paused long enough to truly listen. Many of us are surrounded by noise, news, opinions, distractions. But the prophet lives by revelation, not reaction. Elisha shows us the value of spiritual discernment. You want to navigate hard seasons? Cultivate silence. Fast from noise. Let God speak into your inner ear. Books like Discerning the Voice of God by Priscilla Shirer are great tools to sharpen this sense. Hold up, because there's more than guidance here. There's protection. Elisha's words didn't just inform, they saved lives. What if your prayer life could prevent a crisis before it happens? Intercession is more than comfort. It's strategy. When you tune into heaven's frequency, you start making decisions that seem crazy to others, but turn out to be divine setups. Think of spiritual journaling or even dream interpretation as ways God could be guiding you. But here's a challenge. Spiritual clarity comes with responsibility. Elisha didn't use his insight to gain power or fame. He used it to serve. That's a posture we need today. People who hear from God and use it to build, not boast. What if your prophetic edge is meant to bless someone else's battle? Consider mentoring, sharing words of encouragement, or simply being present when someone's about to make a big decision. If this lit something in you, subscribe and stay with us. Because Elisha's divine perception is about to go even deeper. Next up, eyes are opened, not just to see enemies, but to witness invisible armies blazing with fire. What if I told you that right now, yes, right now, there are angels around you, ready to act? Elisha's servant woke up one morning to see the city surrounded by an enemy army. Panic, fear, despair. But Elisha? Calm as a still lake. Why? Because he could see what others couldn't. He prayed, "Lord, open his eyes." And suddenly, the servant saw it. Horses and chariots of fire, all around. The invisible was more powerful than the visible. And that changed everything. Let's be honest, how many times have you felt outnumbered? Like every situation, every voice, every circumstance is against you? Elisha's response teaches us that perspective is everything. What you see isn't all there is. That anxiety you feel might not be from what's around you, but from what you aren't seeing yet. Take time daily to ask, God, open my eyes. Meditation, prayer walks, or reading Psalms can help reframe your view of reality. Now, this isn't just about feeling better. It's about living braver. Elisha didn't pray for God to send help. He prayed for the ability to see the help already. That's next-level faith. And here's the secret. The supernatural isn't rare. It's just rarely perceived. Start practicing awareness. Journal moments where you sensed God's nearness. Celebrate the unexplainable. Because once your eyes open, you'll start recognizing divine patterns in ordinary days. But there's a twist. This wasn't about escape. Elisha didn't run. He stood firm. When you know heaven backs you, your posture shifts. What would you do differently if you believed you were surrounded by fire-forged angels right now? Would you speak up? Take that risk? Forgive boldly? Elisha's confidence didn't come from ego. It came from vision. If this gave you a glimpse of something greater, subscribe and keep walking with us. Because the very next move Elisha makes, it's unexpected. He doesn't call for battle. He calls for mercy. And that flips the whole story upside down. What would you do if your enemies were delivered into your hands, blind and helpless? That's exactly what happened to Elisha. After praying, God struck the Syrian soldiers with blindness, and instead of calling for their execution, Elisha led them, carefully, respectfully, to Samaria. Then came the twist. He told the king of Israel not to kill them, but to feed them. That's not weakness. That's kingdom. Mercy, when you expect retaliation, is the most powerful weapon a prophet can wield. Let's bring it home. How many times have you wanted payback? Someone wrongs you, gossips, betrays, mocks your calling. Our instinct is to cut off, clap back, or go cold. But Elisha shows another way. Mercy isn't forgetting. It's choosing to rise above. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's strategy. It disarms hell. Want a practical step? Write a letter of grace to someone you haven't forgiven yet. Whether you send it or not, your spirit will shift. Here's what people miss. That act of mercy brought peace. Real peace. Scripture says the Aramean raiders stopped attacking Israel after that moment. Think about that. One unexpected act of kindness rewired an entire dynamic. Elisha teaches us that sometimes peace doesn't come from power, but from the refusal to use it. Consider spiritual boundaries rooted in honor, not retaliation. But stay with me, because this story also reveals the wisdom of restraint. Elisha didn't react emotionally. He stayed aligned with God's character. Too often, we let our pain speak louder than our purpose. But the prophet listens first, speaks second. That posture builds bridges heaven can walk across. Want to grow in this? Read books like The Bait of Satan by John Bevere. It's a masterclass in overcoming offense. If this hit you deeper than expected, subscribe and let's keep going. Because next, Elisha faces a different kind of enemy. Not a soldier, but a sickness. And only humility will open the door to healing. What if the cure you need comes wrapped in humility? Naaman, the mighty Syrian commander, was strong on the battlefield but helpless against leprosy. Desperate, he came to Elisha, expecting spectacle, perhaps a dramatic ceremony or prophetic fireworks. Instead, Elisha didn't even come to the door. He simply sent a message. Go wash in the Jordan 7 times. Offended, Naaman almost left unchanged. But humility? That's where healing begins. Let's pause here. How often do we reject answers because they come in unexpected packages? Maybe the breakthrough you need is hidden in a simple, quiet act of obedience. Elisha didn't complicate the process. He just asked for surrender. What if your miracle is on the other side of something that bruises your pride? Try fasting from control this week. Let others help, take advice, or let go of needing to always be right. But here's the kicker. When Naaman finally dipped himself in the Jordan, not once but 7 times, his skin was restored like a child's. New, pure. That's the power of obedience without negotiation. Elisha's instructions seem too ordinary to be supernatural. But that's the mystery of God. Obedience opens the floodgates. Want to build that muscle? Start each day with one small spiritual discipline. Scripture, silence, service, and don't miss this. Naaman's healing wasn't just physical. It was personal. His pride was washed away with his disease. He returned not just clean, but converted. That's what happens when a prophet touches a life. Elisha didn't just heal his skin. He pointed him to a living God. True transformation always leaves you worshiping, not just winning. Books like Humility by Andrew Murray unpack this journey beautifully. If this stirred your soul, subscribe and walk with us. Because what comes next? It's a warning, not to the powerful but to the greedy. Elisha's servant Gehazi is about to trade integrity for silver and pay the price. What if one lie could cost you your legacy? Gehazi, Elisha's servant, had seen miracles. He walked beside a prophet. He knew the weight of divine purpose. But when Naaman left, grateful and healed, Gehazi ran after him, hungry for what Elisha had refused. Gifts. He lied, took silver and clothes, hid them. But the God who sees in secret saw. Elisha confronted him, and the consequence? Gehazi was struck with the same leprosy that had just left Naaman. Let's get real. How often are we tempted to manipulate outcomes in our favor? Gehazi's downfall wasn't just greed. It was a heart misaligned with the mission. Elisha's refusal to take a reward wasn't poverty mentality. It was prophetic purity. There are moments when saying no proves your calling louder than any miracle. Want to guard your integrity? Practice radical honesty, especially when no one's watching. Here's a hard truth. Gehazi didn't lose access to miracles. He lost the posture to carry them. Walking with a prophet doesn't automatically make you prophetic. You can be close to greatness and still miss your moment if your heart isn't surrendered. Elisha's presence wasn't enough. Gehazi needed his spirit. Ask yourself, am I after the mantle, or just the benefits it brings? And notice this. Elisha didn't curse him out of rage. He spoke truth and clarity. Sometimes love looks like confrontation. That's what spiritual accountability does. If you don't have someone who can call you out, you're vulnerable to your own blind spots. Find mentors. Be teachable. Stay transparent. Books like Integrity by Dr. Henry Cloud can be powerful tools for self-check. If this exposed something in you, in a good way, subscribe and stay close. Because Elisha's journey isn't over yet. The next miracles, they may seem small, but they carry eternal weight. What if the small things weren't so small after all? In a moment of crisis, Elisha threw flour into a poisoned stew, and suddenly, what would have killed now nourished. Another day, he fed 100 men with just a few loaves, and still there was food left over. And even after death, a man revived upon touching Elisha's bones. These weren't headline miracles. They were quiet interventions, but each one whispered the same truth. God sees the little things. Let's be honest. Most of our lives aren't made up of fire from heaven moments. They're full of ordinary struggles, tight budgets, broken routines, tired prayers. Elisha's story reminds us that God moves in pots, portions, and even bones. Miracles don't need stages, they just need surrender. Start noticing the divine in your daily life. Unexpected provision, peace in chaos, small healings. Keep a gratitude journal. Count the quiet wins. Here's a deeper layer. Every miracle met a very human need. Hunger, danger, death. Elisha didn't just call down power, he carried compassion. That's the mark of a true prophet. And maybe that's what your calling looks like too. Not dramatic, but deeply human. Be faithful in listening, praying, helping. Read The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. It's all about sacred simplicity. But pay attention, because these miracles point to something eternal. The revival through Elisha's bones, that's legacy. That's what happens when you live so connected to God that even your remains carry power. What will your legacy revive? Maybe a conversation, a journal, a prayer you left behind? Don't underestimate how God can use even what seems finished. If this touched you in the quiet places, subscribe and journey with us. Because the life of Elisha may end here, but the impact of a prophet never really dies. So now I ask you, what's your Jordan? What's the ox you need to burn, the widow's jar you've been ignoring, or the invisible army you've forgotten surrounds you? Elisha's life isn't just a story. It's an invitation. An invitation to live beyond fear, beyond logic, and beyond limits. To trust the God who multiplies oil, parts rivers, revives the dead, and speaks in whispers. If one man could live this deeply connected to heaven, what's stopping you? Take time this week to revisit one moment from Elisha's journey that spoke to you. Journal about it. Pray through it. Let it transform your next decision. And tell me in the comments, which of Elisha's miracles most connected with your current season? Let's start a conversation. Your insight could be the encouragement someone else needs. If this journey moved your heart, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell. Here, every video is a step closer to the truth that sets us free. Until next time, keep your eyes open. The mantle may be closer than you think.